The Toronto Blue Jays have had a miserable season. There's no way around that. But George Springer, if you were to take any positive out of these last few games, it would be him. And he's really turned his season around after a horrible start and after people calling for his head, plain, plain and simple. But you got to give him a lot of credit for the way that he's responded, and he is shocking everyone with the way that he has been playing. So I'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in everybody to Jay's Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse and George Springer after a miserable start to the season. He was not doing himself any favors with the way that he was playing. He was in the leadoff spot for way too long before John Schneider finally decided to move him down to the number 6 spot. Then he even had a stint in the number 7 spot, and now he's finally etched himself back in that leadoff spot, and he's looked really good ever since. I've been proud of George Springer. There's no other way to put it. And I saw a tweet the other day from Keegan Matheson saying that no one works harder than this guy. When Matheson shows up to the ballpark to do his prep work and to get ready for the ball game, George Springer is typically there hours before he is, hitting before everybody else and making sure that he gets his reps in. This is a World Series MVP. This is someone who, when he came over to Toronto, was one of the best players in baseball. And he's never satisfied. I'm sure no one was more pissed off than George Springer was about his own struggles. And I'm glad that he's back. I'm glad that he's in a great place right now. And hopefully he can keep this going into next season and just have it from game one to 162.
Yeah, and it's been a horrible season for the Blue Jays, quite frankly. But we'll take a positive side today and discuss George Springer. Peter, let's just dive into it. And really, his turnaround has been one of the most surprising in baseball because we were on video. I was personally very critical of George Springer. I think you were a little bit as well because he was not
Mhm.
performing. Obviously, the contract is very, very hefty, and he just wasn't performing. And now, this is crazy. Shout out to Chris Black. He always does good work over there. But he said for close to a month, George Springer has been one of the best players in all of Major League Baseball. The previous 71 games of the 2024 season marked the worst 71 game span of production of Springer's career. Baseball is a silly game. And you look at this, Peter, since June 25th, an OPS of over 1200 with 8 home runs and 25 RBIs. I mean, he's been really just unbelievable. And again, it doesn't really matter because the Jays are not having a very good year whatsoever. But at least we can take some positive out of this and take it from the fact that at least George is back. And if the Jays are trying to compete next season, this could be pretty big for them, even though he is aging and his contract is still very, very hefty.
It does matter, Nick. It definitely matters because he's got a lot of term left on his
That's true.
contract and a lot of money left on his contract. So I know the Blue Jays, when they gave him that deal, envisioned him declining a little bit towards the tail end of it. And that's already happened. It started last year. We saw the bat speed start to dwindle down a little bit. But I'll tell you this, his defense and his speed on the base paths have not been affected whatsoever. So um, maybe he's not done physically. Maybe he's still got a little bit left in the tank, and he's proven that with this recent stretch of play. He's showing that his bat speed is still there, that he's able to catch up to a fastball. And I don't know what happened, what clicked all of a sudden. Maybe it was his work alongside Matt Haig, or maybe it was just him not being satisfied and getting to the ballpark 3, 4 hours
Yeah.
early before everybody else and putting in the work, even though he is one of the most established players on the roster. So that's the thing with Springer. He's just never satisfied and he wants more. And I think that's a very big time presence in this Blue Jays clubhouse, especially one that is looking for veteran leadership. And that is why he kept being in the lineup. So I'll give John Schneider credit for that. He did say a turnaround was coming. And he was right. That was one of the few times that he was right this season. So maybe a broken clock is right twice a day, as they say. But he did call it. He kept the faith in George Springer. The entire coaching staff kept faith in him, and it's paid off. And he's really making the Blue Jays happy because of that.
Yeah, and we have to give some credit to the coaching staff here. I mean, there was an adjustment he made. He lowered his front arm, and he made, I'm sure, a few other adjustments as well within the season. But there was definitely an adjustment that was made, and we can give a shout out to whoever. Probably Matt Haig is really the guy who probably helped facilitate that. But You said it. John Schneider predicted this turnaround and got to give him credit for that. And again, shout out to the coaching staff for whatever adjustment that they made, whether that was, I mean, visibly you can see he lowered his shoulders. I mean, he obviously made a bunch of other things. And Keegan Matheson said what you said earlier. He works hard and he works on the hardest. And you mentioned it, he has nothing left to prove really at this point of his career. But for him to come out and continue to improve every day and turn around, one of the biggest turnarounds I've seen in a very, very long time. And he turned around a season from a negative WAR now to a very effective player. And it is a good point. It may not matter this season in the sense of the Jays competing, but it matters for the age and the length of this contract that he has left, and just for the Blue Jays as they try to compete next season and beyond. And he lined up now. He is 34 years old, but his season is lining up with a similar OPS plus to last year. And obviously, you'd like to see him hover in the 800s or anything like that. But at this point of his career, that may not be attainable anymore, even though he is kind of showing that maybe it could be if this adjustment is sustainable, Peter. But very, very great. And out of 175 ranked qualified hitters, he's right up there near the top in every single metric since June 25th. So
Yeah.
big for him this season. Is it translating to Jays wins? No. But what it does mean is that if they try to compete next year, and even just for the confidence of him going forward, it is very important that this happened. And it's one of the few bright lights the Jays have had this season, at least in the second half of this season.
Well, give me a 2020 season. That's what I'm asking for here. Get to 20 home runs, get to 20 stolen bases. And
Yeah.
I know the average is not that impressive, but the slugging percentage is starting to creep its way up, and he's getting there, Nick. He's really starting to turn the corner. And after a dismal start
Definitely.
to the year where his OPS was in the high 500s, he's now in the 700s. And that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of good performances in a row for you to be in the low 600s or high 500s 75 games into the season and now be a league average hitter or above league average hitter like George Springer is. I mean, that just shows you that he's doing something right. And the thing with him is going to be the consistency. Can he do this over the course of a season, or is he going to flame out after 30 games and not be able to handle the physical rigors of an MLB year? That's what we got to wait and see. But right now, I think the Blue Jays are trying to evaluate who's going to be here next year, who's going to be here in 2 years' time, and George Springer is probably going to be one of those guys. And if you're evaluating from an internal perspective, I think you really like what you're seeing out of him, and you definitely feel comfortable having him in your lineup starting next year.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we're sitting here talking about George Springer being an above league average hitter is surprising in itself, where he was considering literally a month ago when he was one of the worst hitters in baseball. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. You can look at the graph here. He's playing very well, and if he can continue this and continue to hit this way, maybe the Jays can start to do some things. But you can see here, last thing before I wrap up, first 71 games, a brutal OPS. Last 21 games, absolutely on fire. So let us know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on this. Do you think he's going to sustain this, or do you think he's going to go back to his old ways? Hopefully, for the sake of the Blue Jays and that contract, like you mentioned, Peter, he continues to perform this way. Any final thoughts on this?
I'm just happy to see him doing well because I was very excited when the Blue Jays got him just a few years ago, and I didn't care about the length of the contract. I didn't care about the amount of money that they gave to him. He was a true superstar player when he came over, and he's starting to show flashes of that again. Will he ever get back to the 900 OPS that he showed in Houston? Probably not. I think those days are behind him, but
Yeah.
what he is to this team right now goes way beyond what he offers on the field. He's a great leader. He's a fantastic guy off the field, and a lot of fans, including myself, were very critical of George Springer. And I'm glad that he's turned it around, and I'll gladly eat my words if he can keep playing this way. I'll gladly say that I was wrong, and I owe him an apology because it's great to see him smiling. It's great to see him having fun on the field. And in miserable season like the Blue Jays have had, I'll take any silver lining that I can get. I know they won't make the playoffs. I know that they won't fulfill any goals that we had for them going into the season. But if I can see George Springer do well, if I can see Vladdy do well, if I can just see guys develop and grow together, the guys that are going to be here for years to come, I think that's good enough for me as a Blue Jay fan.
Yeah, at this point, we just got to take what we can get and hopefully use them as building blocks for next year when they're maybe going to compete. But that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. See you soon.